Hey friends, welcome back to the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. Hopefully you guys can hear us okay today. We're filming in a different area and I feel like it's very echoey in here.
It's more echoey than usual, so I will work on the audio, but if there's a little extra echo, sorry.
Hopefully it's not too bad. But we're back here. I'm losing track now. Is this episode number 5?
Yeah, it will be.
Episode number 5 of our new series here. We're doing At The Hearth, which is family chats with Jason and I. And we're just tackling a bunch of random topics within the home with raising a family. Most of these are probably all of them are questions that we have gotten that we have wanted to address. So today is a big one. But at the same time, I don't feel like I have tons and tons to say. We'll see
We'll have to see. This is going to be a freewheeling one.
I say that often, and then it's like a 55-minute episode.
Yeah, that happens. She'll often...
I don't think so.
When she's just recording on her own, she'll often be like, all right, this will be a quick one. I'll be ready for you in like 35 minutes. And then I'm like, it's been an hour. I haven't heard back from her.
Those are always the longest. When I think it's when I get like on a roll and I just like really get into the topic, which I don't know. That might happen today. So today we're talking about margin. We're talking about rest. What does that look like? A lot of what we have been chatting about and will be chatting about in the series is forming a productive household. So we're talking about a lot of things to do. We're talking about doing family worship and, just all of the things that we want to do, that we want to be productive, that we want to make sure that we are running our households well. And a really, really key component of this is rest and margin. And I have had comments where people are like, oh, do you ever sleep? And rest and margin is actually very important to us. And I think the reason that I'm able to have so much productivity, which I'm not productive all the time, and often I often feel like I'm not using my time ultra well. I definitely struggle with that, which is why I think I get passionate about this topic. But that is, using your rest and your margin time really well and very intentionally is what allows me to be productive the rest of the time. And so I think it is a hugely important topic. And for you as well, thinking through like your work and your workload and everything, like if you're not rested, you're going to have a lot harder time during the day being productive with your work as well. Yeah.
If I'm not careful about actually taking some time to recharge and just rest in that margin that we're talking about, I will end up hitting a wall. I can only be so productive for so long before I'm like and the thing is once I hit that wall of like burnout, it's harder to actually then get back up on the horse and be productive. You can, you feel like you can take a break and, I'll just take a day and then I'll be productive again. But it often takes longer than that. It's actually a lot more efficient to be building that sort of time in to your daily and weekly schedule instead of just, going all out until you hit a wall and then taking several days to recover.
Yeah, it's true. We've been working like the last 2 months, we've been working really hard. You've been working really, really long hours, which of course means I'm putting the kids to bed a lot more on my own, which, is exhausting for you working long hours and is exhausting for me, somewhat more so for me on some of those days.
Yeah.
And
at least physically.
Yes. Yeah. And so, on those days, we've had many conversations in the last couple of months, like we need to make sure that even though you've got a very rigid and very rigorous work schedule right now, that we are making sure we're kind of checking in and going, hey, are you starting to feel burnt out?
Right.
We need to make sure that not that we necessarily have like a whole lot of extra time to take off, but that we are being very intentional with that downtime, that we're being very intentional to connect together still, even when we're being really busy. Well,
we actually, and I just thought of an example that, might be jumping forward a little bit in our notes, but just last week, I was starting to feel a little bit that way. And I think you were too. And so it was like Friday afternoon and I had many hours still planned of work. And after, I guess I mentioned to you that I was like, oh yeah, I'm a little dragging. Like, it's been a long week. And you were like, why don't we change it then? Why don't we take a little break and do something family oriented? So, so we did. I finished the project I was working on and then we just took off and
we just went to the playground. We didn't do anything like crazy.
Yeah, we didn't do anything special or crazy. We packed up the kids. We went to a park. We played. We got pizza for dinner. And it was just a nice afternoon, far different than the afternoon I had planned. But it was just good.
Some time that we really needed.
It was. And it really helped so that then going into the next week, I could have been like, ugh, like this is horrible. And then Monday could have been terrible and maybe even Tuesday. But instead, it was a really nice little break. And it was because you were being sensitive to how I was talking.
Well, I was feeling it too.
Yeah.
So
when I think it was when I mentioned, oh yeah, I feel like I'm dragging today. Like it's been one of those hard days. I feel like it's a little bit of burnout. And you were like, okay, then let's do this.
Do something.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the blessing and the curse of running your own business, is that we had that flexibility to take a few hours off on Friday, but also with running your own business, you've been working till 9 p.m. like 3 to 4 days a week right now, like really hustling, getting stuff done that we need to do. But that's also the hard part of a small business, is that when you own your own business, it can crowd out every moment. It's really easy to fill Saturdays up with projects. And right now we've been like, we're nose to the grindstone trying to get stuff done. And we're thankful for that. Trying to have a good attitude, in the midst of long hours. And yet, that's where you have to be careful. Like, we've got that blessing then that we can take some time off, but you could take all the time off, and then you wouldn't have any money,
Exactly.
And so it can definitely be difficult there. So that's definitely something that's an added element, is we do have added flexibility, but that flexibility is not always positive. And
you can easily overdo it.
We have to be extra careful that we are being very disciplined and rigid with our work, and then also flexible and making sure that we are taking that time too, which is a hard balance. It's a balance that I think on a weekly basis, we're kind of evaluating, and we're like, how are we doing? What's going on? Yeah. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is the importance of rest and margin. I'm not going to hammer this in too hard, because I think all of us know this. I think we live in a culture that definitely is hustle culture. We've shared before, when Jason was working in his corporate office, in his like really high powered sales position, the men who were very, very successful were working 7 days a week. They were in the office Saturdays and Sundays. They were working till 9, 10, 11 p.m. every day, every day of the year. And just this absolute hustle culture that had no balance, no margin. And we know that just leads to absolute burnout. You're not making things the right priority. And when you're raising a family like we are, our kids and our family are hugely important.
They're a huge priority, and they require a lot of time.
They require a lot of time. So we're in a season right now where we're really balancing that, like a lot of extended work hours. And there are seasons where you have to do that. There's seasons where you're like, we don't have every Saturday off as a family, or, I don't have as much downtime as I'd like. And I think that's also part of just recognizing that God gives us different seasons, that we can be thankful for the season that we're in. We can be thankful for the time he has given us, even if it's not as much as we would want. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes when people, see, oh, you own your own business, like your life must be cush, and you barely work. And it's like, no, it's actually quite the opposite. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of work. It's a very hard job to choose, is running your own business, especially when you're in the fledgling years like we are. We don't have 100 employees to go run stuff for us while we take time off. And so it just is really, really important to have a right perspective on rest and margin, and no matter what your job is. But I just think in our culture, we really don't have good boundaries on what that is, or what it looks like also to rest well. Right. So from a biblical perspective, we know that God designed rest as a gift. So, taking time off, that weekly Sabbath, having, I've always thought it was very interesting. I read something a long, long time ago. I don't remember what it was from, talking about the fact that, God made it so that we have to sleep 7 to 8 hours every single night. And God easily could, if it was just about our production, if it was just about our output, if it was just about doing things, oops, I'm hitting the microphone. Then he easily could have made it that we don't ever have to sleep. And yet God gave us this beauty. And, we look at little kids, and the little kids don't want to go to sleep. And you're like, what is wrong with you? Sleep is the best. Yeah. We can recognize that as adults, and yet still really struggle to get enough sleep for ourselves. And so really teaching, I really want to teach our kids like the beauty of rest and sleep, and that it is a gift, and get ourselves to bed earlier, which we struggle with sometimes. And so just really seeing rest as a gift. And yet for me, I get very passionate about the fact that, we want to rail against this hustle culture, but at the same time, our days shouldn't just be leisure all the time, every single day. And I think that's what that's the dichotomy we have, is then on the opposite end, we expect that we should just have leisure time all the time, and that things should always be easy. And so it's very easy to slip into true laziness then. Right. So I don't know that most people don't necessarily need to be told that they need to rest more. It's more figuring out rest that's actually restful
Yeah.
and balancing that with actual hard work. Like
Yeah.
we're called to work hard every single day. Our day should be filled with good, productive, hard work that's satisfying, that's fulfilling. And then we rest. But when we rest, it's true rest.
Yeah.
And that we're actually filling our cups back up. And yet most of us, for a lot of what we do, is just not, it's not actually restful rest. And that's where it, to me, very much veers into laziness then. And that's what I struggle with is like laziness of not getting up early enough to get my day going. And, because I was up too late binging a Netflix show, which wasn't that restful anyway. And, you just kind of have this where you have to figure out what that looks like in a productive life, using our time well before the Lord and viewing that rest kind of as a gift.
Yeah.
So, and that margin matters. We talked about avoiding burnout. It's good for marital relationships, good for relationships with our kids. I need to make sure that we have enough downtime that my kids can explore things and chat. And that's one thing for homeschool is we do have a very busy life. We have 8 kids. We run our own business. Our schedule and our weeks are full. And yet I try to make sure that our homeschool is fairly slow. Yeah. Like I feel like we have a lot to do every single day. And yet I want my kids to have time to explore. Our kids have been super into filming videos and then editing them and doing special effects. And they were so cute. They made this one video. It's like amazing our technology we have now, how easy they can do this stuff. But they made a video where they like threw a blanket over someone and then they did like a poof sound and then the person literally disappeared and the blanket fell to the ground and they're having fun like exploring all this like, all movie making magic.
Yeah.
And I want them to have that time and that margin in their school to be able to do that. And so it is for us very intentionally making sure that we're not overscheduling ourselves, that we're not constantly filling our schedule so full that we don't have time for the things that do matter. And so we are our schedule's full, we are busy, but I don't know, it's kind of that constant tightrope of choosing the right things that are filling up our days, right? And so I know for us, when we are lacking margin, when we're lacking kind of that adequate rest, it's always when you and I get more snippy at each other.
Yeah,
that's when we're
more
like,
irritable.
Yeah. And it's like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And just really, I know I tend to be more sensitive of feeling like I just am, I have weeks where I'm like, I just don't feel like connected with you this week. Like, I feel like we haven't had enough time to sit and chat. And then I also notice it with the kids too. Our daughter recently had a couple of things back to back that she was doing with her cousins. And it was like back to back to back. And by like the third day, she was just like this whiny mess. And she had a great time. It was a great couple of days. And I finally said, hey, next time we plan some of this stuff, I think we need to limit it to like one thing a week because I feel like maybe this is overdoing it for you. And she was like, yeah, like it was a lot. Like, and I think maybe she's definitely on the more introverted side, even though she had a blast and she's now begging me, when are we doing this with cousins again? But I think it was just too much all at once for her. And so it was just, her little body needed some more downtime. And so recognizing that too, and teaching her how to recognize that, teaching our kids how to recognize when you're feeling kind of that burnout.
Yeah.
I know as soon as kids are not getting quite enough sleep, that's when we have more attitudes during school. That's when there's just a little bit more snippiness with each other. And so I'm always kind of watching that. We just recently did this where we had just bedtimes had gotten pushed back and back and back and back. And we finally just went back and like reset. This is firm bedtime because people were just not quite getting enough sleep. And it was just, you can start to see that come out sideways.
Yeah.
At that point. All right. So now I want to jump into some of the practical parts. How do we practically build margin? What does that look like? We've kind of already talked about this, but we're going to talk about a few things that we do. I don't think that there's anything like magic. I don't think that we have like a 12-step plan or a 5-step plan to suddenly have margin. I think our seasons have looked very different from each other. Like I feel like every 3 to 4 months, we're like, okay, what's going to work for this next season? What is this going to look like? We're getting ready to move our RV now to a new area. Like we're looking ahead now. Our life is going to look different again in just rhythms and routines. So I think that's a lot constantly of you and I just being like, hey, what does this week need to look like? What is this month? What is the next few months? Yeah. And I think I do it a lot. I'm constantly like, hey, I'm feeling like school's not working quite right. We're kind of struggling with math. I'm thinking about changing this up. What do you think? Like, I'm always kind of looking for, hey, maybe we need to do our bedtime routine a little different, just because seasons do change. And I want to just, I want to be aware of things that we can help
Yeah, and it is very helpful to be proactive like that, trying to actually think ahead. And it is very often where we start to hit a point where maybe our season has changed of just like what's going on a little bit. And so a week into that, we're like, oh, our old routines aren't really quite working. What can we change? Or it might even just be a case of those routines kind of sliding a little bit. And so, we should probably, reinstitute them because it's just, we're starting to feel that more of that burnout or tiredness or getting more irritable with each other.
Yeah.
And so it'd be having those check-ins and proactively trying to institute things can be really helpful.
Yeah. I know one thing, we've talked about this before. One thing that's been really helpful is you have always been really good on sleep. Like I remember when we were in college and I was more so too, but you've always been like in college. I mean, we're talking like, we were 21, 22, 23. You could easily function on 5 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, there was times where you probably functioned on 4 and you were tired, but you were okay. And also it's like your early 20s and you don't get sleep. And so you'd stay up till midnight, you'd be up at 5. Like you could do really well. And I did really well too. And I think for a long time, it was kind of like in your brain, like you don't need as much sleep to function. And I think for a long time, that was definitely the case.
Yeah.
Well, now we have a million children and life is busy and your work takes so much brain power.
Yeah.
And so finally, like a couple years ago, we started like, I don't think you fully realized that you were starting to get hit by like this tiredness and stuff in the afternoons. Like I think stuff was starting to hit you more, but you weren't necessarily like connecting like, oh, maybe I'm to the point where I need more sleep.
Yeah. Maybe I can't survive on what I did in my 20s now in my 30s.
Maybe that doesn't work. And with kids too, like it does, know, you definitely get more tired. And so we kind of went on a journey for you of really trying to find some supplements and things that would help. We have found a few things to help with sleep, and we both take magnesium is one thing that we really
we
find
take that before bed every night.
Has really helped. And then the other thing we have mentioned several times that Jason has been now using for a long time is Magic Mind. I don't know if you guys can see this very well. You can see it's this kind of creepy looking little green shot, which you see something green and you're like, is it wheatgrass? What is it?
Yeah.
But this Magic Mind shot is actually really tasty. It's like very, what would you call it? Like a really refreshing taste.
Yeah.
So Jason's been taking this now for a while. You take it, when do you tend to take it?
I usually take it when for me, I've actually been taking it like early afternoon.
Okay. Yeah.
Like sort of before I would expect to normally have that afternoon slump around 2:00-ish. That's where I found
it. So you take it preemptively now?
I do. I take it sort of preemptively, like before I'm feeling it. It really helps. It does. It's not like
okay. So we're not talking like a gross energy drink with like 500 million milligrams of
I was going to say
caffeine or
it's not like
that.
It's not like taking something and like having an extreme shot of like manic energy. It's more like it helps to smooth out my afternoon to make to make me not feel like I'm drowsy.
Yeah. You know what? So it doesn't feel like a shot of energy. It just feels like you have sustained energy then, like in a very calm way. Cause I definitely get like really jittery from like too much caffeine and stuff like that. And this is really like actually the opposite. So basically it's like a superfood blend is what I always say. It's got nootropics in it. It's got adaptogens. That's my favorite. It's got antioxidants. It's immunity support. So when you really go, if you head over to the website and see everything that it's got in it, it's got lion's mane. It's got turmeric, L-theanine. It's got ashwagandha, which is my personal favorite. That's like my go-to.
It's actually one of my favorites too.
For a long time before we found Magic Mind, that was what I was like, okay, you're struggling with this. You're going to have some ashwagandha because it helps your body. It's an adaptogenic herb. So it helps your body adapt to stress, which is just like, it helps your body with that kind of sustained energy. And then it has all kinds of other stuff. It's got a bunch of vitamin Bs, which are really good for energy. And most Americans tend to be very deficient in vitamin B. And they're really, really important. It's got vitamin C and D. And it's got matcha. That's where the great taste comes from, is that matcha. It has so much in it. And so it's good for, it's good calm energy. It helps lower stress. It's supposed to help sharpen your mind.
And it does.
You feel like that?
I do feel like there's been very few things that I've ever found that do that for me. And I do think part of that must come from the ashwagandha because
ashwagandha is so good.
Yeah, because it does feel like it's sometimes not even just like a tiredness. It's just kind of a blasé where you're just like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Like I can't even focus on this.
Well,
and it does help with that.
What's really nice for you is I feel like you have not had that many aha magic moments with like supplements or anything through the years.
Very
where
few.
You're not like a supplement addict that's like, I must take 100 because you've tried some and you're like, they do nothing for me. Whereas this, I feel like you actually really feel like this is helpful. And I know you don't take it like every day. It's not like you're addicted to it, but having it, so you just throw these in your laptop bag.
Yeah. If I'm home, I often will have
prefer them cold, right?
Yes. So I usually have them. We have them in the fridge at home. Sometimes I'll drink them over ice. They're really good. I've mixed them with juice before, which can actually be like a nice mix. And I've actually once or twice put them in with like some sparkling water and almost made it like, which was actually really good. I should do that.
That
more
would be
often.
really good.
The most often way I drink them though is just straight out of this. So I'll throw them, like you said, when I'm going to be gone all day. Easy. I throw it into my laptop bag and I take it. Haven't taken one today, so I'm gonna.
Oh, take one now.
Yeah.
So so I really like it. So Magic Mind actually had reached out to us about possibly doing a sponsorship, and that's how we had originally tried them a long time ago. And now I've got an entire box for you, and Jason's very excited. I like them too. And if it was just me, like I would take them by myself. But because they are so helpful, I tend to save them for Jason because once we get the box, then it's like Jason's like, oh, my new box is here. Because, it's nice to have something on hand that you can, just use. So what's really, really fun and exciting, though, is Magic Mind has given me a special code for you guys. OK, so if you want to try it out, it's just like get a box and see how it works for you. Because I think you need to take it more than once, take it a couple times, see if it's really, really going to help. And I love that it's superfood. So this is like a whole food superfood shot of amazingness, right? So you can go to magicmind.com/ and then this is all one word, Jami Balmain 20. Okay. And we'll link it down below for you. Jami Balmain 20, and it gets you up to 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days. So you can get up to 48% off your first subscription. So just for the next 10 days, head over and check that out because that's a huge deal. That is absolutely fantastic. And then you can try it out for yourself, for your husband, for whoever's dragging and needs a little bit of extra help.
In my opinion, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. So go to magicmind.com/ Jami Balmain 20, and then you can get up to 48% off, which is really amazing. So other things we do in helping margin and rest, and this is really helpful because one of the things is you were drinking caffeine too late in the day,
and that can ruin my sleep when I do that.
So he started having where he was like, I'm just waking up too much at night. I'm not sleeping through the night. And I was like, babe, when you were younger, caffeine didn't affect you at all. We could both take caffeine at like 10 p.m. and it was like no big deal. But now when you have caffeine too late, it's definitely disrupting your sleep. And so that was something I was like, you need to wean off of that caffeine. And so it's really nice to have something.
Yes. Now helpful. I relegate that to the first half of my day. And
so that for me, those are some very practical things with creating rest is like, I'm very intentional. Like in the last, has it been like 2.5 years? Has it been 2.5 years since we went off caffeine or a year and a half?
It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but maybe it has. I think it has been that long.
No, it's been a year and a half.
Okay.
Because it was before we went to my cousin's wedding.
Yes. And that was.
So it would have been like a year and a half ago. Anyway, so it's been like a year and a half. I finally was like, my body was just not responding even to morning coffee at all. So we have switched to completely decaf. We still get like our really yummy espresso beans that we have, but we just do Swiss water processed decaf. So we do all decaf now. And that has made a really big difference for me. And so I'm very like one of my ways that I create rest for myself is trying as best I can to make sure that I'm actually sleeping at night and that I'm getting a good night's sleep. So it's making sure that I'm exercising because that definitely helps, but I have to do it earlier in the day. I can't do it in the evening or it disrupts my sleep. Making sure I'm not drinking caffeine. I'll have a teeny bit here or there, but it has to be before noon. And all of our coffee is decaf. Yeah. Trying not to be on screens or especially my phone. TV seems to not keep me up as much, maybe because the distance, I don't know. It's still like blue light, but watching TV before bed, I don't tend to have much problem. But being on my phone right before bed definitely makes it harder for me to go to sleep. So really just doing things like that I can try to help, create just rest, just making it more restful for me is one big thing. Yeah. Because I don't have a lot of free time. It's not like I have all this free time in this season, but if I'm sleeping well, my day's so much better. And I mean, I have a baby who's up still at night. And so it's not like I'm getting 12 hours of sleep, but the sleep that I'm getting, I want to try to make sure that it's more restful.
Yeah. You want to make sure that it is as high quality. You're getting the deep sleep and the REM. And because I wear a watch at night that, tells me exactly how I sleep. And so I can see, the nights, and it's funny because I definitely trust it because it definitely correlates with how I'm feeling. And I'm like, man, I feel like I didn't sleep well last night, and I can look at my data and I'm like, yeah, I didn't. I had
no kidding.
I had 10 minutes of REM and very little deep sleep. It was all just light with a whole bunch of wake ups for some reason.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you do the right things to protect that sleep.
Well, and thinking through cutting out caffeine and doing things that are going to help. I think that's huge. And I think we want leisure time. We want downtime. We want hobby time or TV time or social media time. And I'm not saying that those things are bad. You need to have them in the proper order, but we so are craving those things that we're not realizing that rest means getting enough sleep so you have the energy to do what you need to the next day. That's a huge part of it, yeah. And so that is really something that we are very, very cognizant of, especially in the season that we're in. So really, for me, that's a really big part of it. So of course, then that kind of backs into my evening where I used to be able to I could work on the computer, I could do stuff and then go to bed and it was fine. Now, and I used to I would be oh, it's 10 o'clock. Everybody's in bed. I can finally clean the house like crazy. I try to make sure that I don't have any of that sort of activity leading up, especially the hour before bed, but preferably 2 hours before bed, that I'm not doing all of that kind of crazy activity. And there are nights, there's times where I'm I got to get this stuff done, and so that's fine. But trying to order my day well so that those last 2 hours before bed are a lot more restful when we can, that I like to read before bed. That's one way that I really definitely create a lot of margin for myself, is that if I can just spend a little bit of time in the evening before bed reading, or I've been doing punch needle lately. I've been making a rug for our bedroom. That's something that's been really, really fun. I love working with my hands. It's something that I can get out if, I love quilting too, but I have to have 3 hours to get everything out and to make actually it worth do. It, yeah, especially in the RV. It's I have to unpack our whole room to get it all out. And I love doing that, but I don't often have the time for that. Whereas punch needle, I can be I have 20 minutes. I'm just going to get it out and do it. So those are things to me that are extremely restful in a rejuvenating, building up way for me. Versus if you were just end up, get the kids in bed and you sit down on your phone and all of a sudden it's an hour later, it's not restful to me. It's not rejuvenating. Yeah. And it can be fun to sit and scroll reels for 5 minutes. I'm not against that, but it's not ever what I actually want to be doing with my time. Yeah. So there's times where I'll be I look at you and I'm Jason, put your phone down. Yeah. Or he'll be are you doing what you want to be doing? Yeah. And sometimes I'm yes, I'm legitimately doing what I want to be doing in this moment. I'm going to spend 10 minutes scrolling and do that. But sometimes I'm no, you're right. Put the stupid phone down. Why am I on this right now? Yeah. I want to, kind of have that rest. And I'm not saying it's not that I have 2 hours of rest time every single night even, but working towards that and working towards things that are actually truly restful for me in the evenings. And I think you definitely need that downtime as well. Yeah. For me, sometimes actually more than I do. I think the physical break of getting sleep and rest that way is very important. But from the mental side, it's mentally. I do feel I suffer mentally if I don't have some sort of a break. So especially even when I'm working late, if I don't actually have at least a little bit of time to sit down, chat with you, read a bit of my book, watch a TV show or something like that, then the next day, it will feel that's when your days start, for me at least, my days start to blend together and I'm oh, I'm just working again. I don't feel that break. And so for me, for at least the mental side of rest and margin, having some sort of a break at the end of the day is very helpful. Our work is very mental and creative. You're in the middle of 3 different books you're writing right now. And and I'm writing one right now. And so it's definitely, there's certain parts of my work where I sit down and you just have to push buttons and click things and do it. And, it's annoying if you don't feel well, if you're tired, but it's not the same where you sit down and you're I have to write chapter 4 and your brain doesn't work, and you're just so exhausted and you're burnt out. You can't just write it, and so I think too, we have to be very careful with our work too, that we're protecting that energy. And then I feel definitely the same with taking care of the kids. Like when I am exhausted and tired and cranky, like our entire homeschool morning feels very hard and long compared. Whereas when I'm like, okay, let's do it. And someone has a bad attitude and I'm like, buck up, buddy. It's okay. Like it's just night and day difference. And some days you're just going to be exhausted. The baby was up 12 times and someone's sick. And there's times you go through that, but I can also make that better or worse depending on how I am handling my own energy and how I am being wise or not with my time and being intentional. So, I mean, there's been times in the last few weeks where it's been like 10:30 by the time I'm finally sitting down after cleaning the kitchen, getting food away, getting all the kids down. You're getting home like 9 or 9:30. And then I finally am like, okay, I could get on my phone and before I know it, it's going to be midnight, or I'm going to set a timer and say, I'm going to read for half an hour. I'm going to take that time. We're going to chat for a few minutes and then we're going to bed, you know, and like really just, you know, it's not that we're owed hours and hours and hours of leisure time, but with the margin that you have,
how to maximally use it.
How are you using it? Yeah. And I don't think reading is like the answer for everybody.
It is for us though.
It is for us. And so figuring out what that is it taking that time? And there's been many nights in the last 2 months where we have very much intended, okay, we're putting the kids to bed. As soon as we sit down, we're reading. And then we end up talking for an hour. Instead, and we're like, oh, we were going to read tonight. And obviously in those nights, that was the right thing. Like we just wanted to chat and talk and, you know, and recognizing that that is rest and margin as well. And that it's going to look differently. Or there's times where we've been carving out a lot more time to go on daily walks, which I want to do a lot better at this week. And so the kids and I have been doing a lot of walks. If you happen to be working from home, then
I'll often
you'll go on the walk with us. And then one thing we've been doing on Tuesdays, you've been working till 9 on Tuesdays normally. And so we have been in the middle of the day, I pack up the kids and we meet you either at the library or a playground that's near where you're working, like at a coffee shop or Panera or whatever for the day. And we'll meet and you'll meet us for like an hour and we'll go to the library together or we'll go play at the playground. And it's just a fun little way that we can connect, we can touch, you know, say hi, and then you're back to work. I take the kids home and like, it's a unique way in this really busy season that we're adding in some of that time and more time with the kids. And
and it's a nice rejuvenating, refreshing mini break in the middle of the day. Cause we usually do it around like 1 o'clock or so. And then I can go back and I can feel, you know, cause I might be putting in still 7 hours of work that day. But I feel like I'm almost starting over for the day, which is actually really nice.
It's been a really good break. And then with our schedule right now, I have been working on Wednesdays. So Wednesdays, you have the kids all day. And in the morning, you're doing school with them. And that's really nice too, because of your insane schedule, you're not having as much time with them in the evenings because most of them are in bed by the time you're getting home then. And so, but you see them in the morning. But having that Wednesday, you're there all day with them. You've got that concentrated time. You're not working. That's your time with the kids. And so that has created a lot of balance too. If you talk about margin, you know, you definitely can have, I mean, I know there's a lot of workaholics out there where like they don't ever see their kids. That's not the answer either. You know, like there's just so much nuance to this that, you know, once again, you're going to get sick of us saying this in this series, but this is where each family has a lot of freedom to figure out what works well for you. And what is each season? We've had other seasons like, well, when we were traveling full time around the country, often you were working from home all day long, most of the time, which obviously is not ideal either. In some ways, makes it harder for work. But we had so many times there where like we were all together every day, all the time, like so much more margin in that way. But also that season was draining in very different ways too. So kind of just, I don't know, for me looking at, you know, what season are you in? What unique obstacles do you have? What unique benefits do you have?
And what needs do you have in that margin to actually feel rested, both mentally and physically?
Yeah. So what we're doing right now, like our weekends, we get up and unless we have something unusual, Saturday mornings are just absolute family downtime. You and I get up, we get coffee, we're on the couch. We often will do a little bit of reading. The kids are playing, they can watch a movie, like they're outside. We're just like having those couple of hours of just absolute downtime together as a family. And then usually we've been getting some work projects done Saturday afternoon.
Or home projects or home
projects or things that we need to get done. And then Saturday night, we usually do like a family movie night together. We do our pizza night. We have often been doing board games. Well, normally Saturday nights are board game night, but we haven't been doing that lately, which the kids keep asking.
Yeah, we need to get back to that.
And then Sundays are our day of like all family time. So we have church. We often have lunch after church with people. We just, Sundays are the days where we're really able to be home and to be together. And that also is really, really big too, because that makes a big difference. We look forward to Sundays being like a day where we can just sit and relax and have some tea and, figure out. And then often Sundays are spent with other people.
Yeah.
So we're not always just home, but it's those days, that's a different kind of margin too, of being able to be with friends and
have some fellowship and
all of that. So that obviously makes a difference too, because then by Sunday night, I'm usually like, okay, tomorrow's Monday, hit the ground running. Yeah. Let's figure out what we're doing.
Prepping for the week ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can be very useful.
And so going into the weekend then on Fridays, I always try to make sure that like Friday afternoon is a big house reset where like I want to be caught up on laundry. I want to have the house clean so that Saturday morning we wake up and like that's not on our list then to just like clean the house all day. We've got kind of that margin. So then hopefully we slide into Sunday with it, the house being decent-ish, and kind of just makes a difference there too. So, of course, with setting boundaries, with margin, it's learning how to say no. There are so many commitments. There's so many time things. We were just talking when we move our RV here soon in about a month, we're going to have a whole different set of like church and community like events that we're going to be able to get plugged into, which we're really excited for. But we were just talking like, okay, this is going to be placing a whole lot more on our schedule. And we're going to have to make sure that to protect your work time, to protect family time, like we're going to need to really kind of figure out in this new season, how is that going to work? Like, what are we saying yes to? What are we saying no to? And just being really intentional and not just letting things happen to us and then feeling stressed out and like we don't have time. Yeah. What are the appropriate things to say yes and to say no to? And that changes sometimes.
Yeah. You have to consider that when you're thinking, when a new opportunity for something, an event, especially recurring ones, you have to think, how will this fit into our current schedule? And is it going to be such a commitment that we should probably actually remove something from the schedule? Or can our margin handle this right now? And just, like you were just saying, being able to say yes and no in a thought out manner, actually thinking through those things before committing to something new or that sort of thing.
Well, I know so a practical example is that sometimes God just asks us to go through a really busy season and we can still be very intentional with our rest time, even when your rest time looks like this compared to a lot. Mm-hmm. So I remember I was teaching a class a year or two ago on the holidays. And talking about how because of schedules, like holidays tend to be like December tends to be a month where we don't say a whole lot. We don't say yes to a whole lot of outside stuff. Mm-hmm. So we are not going to parties constantly. We do like doing things. We do select things with people, but it's a lot. December tends to be a lot of home time because we have a lot of traditions. We have a lot of things we want to do. And we know that really quickly you start adding too many things to that schedule. And then all of a sudden it's December 26th and you didn't do most of the things that you wanted to that month and you feel like the month is gone. So it's a time that we protect. And so what was interesting is in one of these classes, someone said, okay, but like my family can't do that. We're in ministry. And so my husband has to say yes to all of these events because that's his business. And, it's his job. We have to say yes to this. So she was kind of like, so we can't create margin. And what it made me realize is what I wasn't saying is the reason we're so protective is because December is one of your busiest months of the year for business. You are absolutely insane coming out of our Christmas shop launch in November. Going into December, you're usually working around the clock. It's extremely, extremely, extremely busy. So those are the things that our schedule is already so packed being the busiest time of the year that we have to be more picky on what we say yes to or no to. So if your husband is in ministry and that's his job, well, okay, those are the things God's asking you to say yes to right now. So what are the other things? Like, what else are you saying no to? It's all about figuring out and saying, well, I can't do what that person's saying to do. No, like it's looking at what has God handed you. And right now, God has handed us a very, very busy schedule. And how can we steward that well? Mm-hmm. How can we, take it on and say, okay, we're going to have a good attitude about this. I'm doing 3 to 4 nights a week of putting the kids down by myself, which, I've been working on trying to get a better schedule because bedtime has gotten later and later and making dinner. And so I'm like, okay, I need to do some more crock pot meals this week and get dinner at like 5 and get it reset so that I can actually get the littles into bed right at 7. It really trying to evaluate like that. It'd be way easier for me if you were home to do dinner with me and do bedtime. And that's just not what we have for the schedule right now. So how can we have a joyful heart through that? Yeah. How can we be like, okay, this is the season we have. Let's have good attitudes about that and figure out what do we say yes to and what do we say no to right now this season. So because of that, we're saying no to more outside things. We don't have as much on our schedule. And there's other seasons where we've had way more on our schedule. And we're about to be in a season where we're going to have a lot of community things and hospitality and all kinds of stuff on our schedule again, which is exciting. And so we need to kind of figure out where that balance is. And then also to not just blindly say yes to everything because it sounds fun in the moment.
Well, and to go back a little bit to something you were saying that made me think of, sometimes there is just not an ideal mix for a season and you're just going to be overloaded. And so instead of letting that happen to you, if you know it's coming, like maybe in the holidays, you're going to have more family events. Obviously there's Christmas and New Year's and like things that you're going to have commitments for. And like you said, maybe if your husband is in ministry and so he's going to be committed to a lot of those, church things, then go into that knowing that. And try to prepare yourselves as much as possible. And also then like plan as much as you can to, on the back end of that, allow yourself a bit more recovery time.
Yeah.
I think that, sometimes you just, it's like, oh, this is going to be twice as busy as we usually are. And it's going to be a month like that. Well, it's like, okay, well, maybe you can't do these daily or weekly things to really, help that. But in some cases, just that mindset shift that like we're going into this, let's mentally prepare for it. That can actually, that can help you get through it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how we were like in December when our band was like completely out and we weren't able to we wanted to do all the Christmas lights and do all the fun things and go do Christmas cookies, all the things. And it was this season that it was like, okay, this is not what we expected for Christmas. We're here with family. We wanted to be able to do all the things. And so we were just like, you know what? This is just a season where we're just going to be home a whole lot more than with only one vehicle and one vehicle that does not fit all of us.
Vehicle. Yeah, we have 2 vehicles, but only the van actually fits everyone.
And so that's what we did. We just embraced that season head on and said, the Lord just is telling us that we're going to be home a lot more this Christmas. So we left the house for church because your parents were able to drive 4 of our kids to church on Sunday. So we were able to all go to church together. And other than that, I don't know that we ever left once in the month of December together as a family. And we had different times where I would take a couple kids and go shopping or, we went, back and forth like that. But, it was a season and we embraced it and the Lord is good. And so I think it's just an encouragement too, that whatever season that you're in, don't say, oh, well, I don't have this time or I don't have the money to be, have margin like someone else or, look for what you can do. And I know for me, this has definitely been when I start to feel like, I need to go back to practical things that I can do within my home. So often it comes down to like, I'm feeling out of control about the house or the laundry. And I need to figure out I need to tighten up some household routines a little better. Yeah. I need to get the kids retrained on some chores. I need to sit and brainstorm and go, okay, which chores do we need to kind of, shake up because I'm feeling like I can't get all of this done. Or I need to figure out my meal planning better. Or like I said, I've been brainstorming like dinner just consistently the last 2 weeks has been so late that it's like 7:30 by the time we're eating. And for us, it's just too late. And
7:00 is usually our 2-year-old's bedtime.
Yeah. So. And the little 2 are down by then. And so it just it's just creeped back and back and back. And then it's pushing my whole night. And so I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? I need to do some crock pot meals. I need to like get in every day. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let it get so late. And then it just keeps happening. And so what can I brainstorm? What can I kind of do to set things up a little bit differently in order to create a little bit more of that rest? And so that for me and all the kids home, that 7:00 doesn't feel as stressful, that 7's more peaceful and stuff's cleaned up. And I can say, yes, I can sit and watch your video that you just made. And so that to me is when I start to feel like things are out of control, I often just need to go back to the schedule and say, maybe it's overfull. Maybe you're saying yes to too much. Maybe you're out of the home way too often. And you need to look at it and say, okay, do we need to simplify some things? Do we need to declutter? That's one thing I just did in the kids' room is it just kept spilling out and feeling like every single time I turned around, it was so insane in there. And so I finally went in and took out like half the stuff in their room, and magically it's so much easier to keep clean. And so there are things that very practically we can look at and do that I think make a huge difference, because rest and margin is really not this like mystical thing. Like we can rest in the Lord. I mean, Sabbath is a whole other, topic that we could talk about. But it often it's, do we have other things in place in our home? Do we have other very practical routines set so that we can create even just a little bit more rest, a little bit more margin? We like our evenings to be very peaceful, even for the kids. Once it's hit, like each tier of children has like bedtime hours. Once that bedtime has hit, they're able to read in their bed for half an hour quietly. And really just, when we don't have good rhythms in place, bedtimes get whacked, because of holidays or sickness or whatever. There's so much more chaos in the evenings.
Yes, there is.
Whereas when we're really on it and we're, and that takes a lot for us to make sure that those routines and stuff are running. Yeah. But I love in the evening when the 4 older boys go to bed and you just have like, everybody's got their little soft lights on and they're just reading, and there's quiet and there's peace and it's rest for them too. It's margin for them. It's teaching the whole household how to have this rest and margin. And it doesn't happen by accident, at least in our household.
No, it's something we have to fight for and be very intentional on.
Yeah. And so, I think that's all I've got there. If you have any,
I think that covers that.
Anything else? Yeah. So I'd love to hear from you guys on this. I do think I find it interesting to see how everybody, creates margin in different ways. One of the things you and I are both working on is actually creating a little bit more of that margin at the beginning of our days. It
just requires getting up earlier.
We are both night owls, especially me. And I'm so much more tempted to kind of end my night and stay up too late. And then I'm not getting up early enough, but then I'm getting up immediately to the kids and off and running. And so we've really been working on establishing much better morning routines, which we've been doing pretty good this year. But what I'd like to do is stretch that time. So I'm actually getting up a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier, so that I have more of that time in the morning to sit and do my Bible reading, to do my prayer, to do my exercises. And that's all done by 8 a.m. when everybody else is getting up and starting school. My days are amazing when that happens. Yeah. And sometimes, kids are sick or the baby's up too much and I'm like, I am sleeping in because I need it. And other times I'm sleeping in because I just was lazy and I stayed up too late and I wasn't disciplined. And so that's, for me too, that's an interesting, part of margin that's margin too. That is rest. Yeah. Is resting in the Lord, being in scripture, being in prayer. And sometimes I'm too lazy and I'm not disciplined enough to make it happen.
Yeah.
I think that's an important part of resting in the Lord is actually, it's not just binging Netflix. Like, are you in the Word? Are you praying? That's rest. And that's really resting in Him. And it's, the most important rest that we can do. And so that's something that you guys know I talk about it all the time. Something I'm continually always working on. Sometimes I get it really, really well. Sometimes I'm half doing it and sometimes it's terrible. And so we've definitely we're a work in progress in that. Well, and in everything, but especially in that regard.
Definitely in that, yes.
All right. Well, if you guys have any feedback, anything you guys want to share on this episode, please come find us every single week in our Joyful Home community. We have got the episodes that publish there, and then you guys are welcome to come chat and share. You can join us. It's a free community. Just go to findingjoycommunity.com.
Yep. And check the link down in the description or the show notes for these Magic Mind things. What was that URL?
It's magicmind.com/JamiBalmet20. You can get up to 48% off your subscription, which is so great because then you can really try it out for really good discount.
If you do try them, let us know how they go for you because...
Oh yeah, do you like them? Do they work? Yeah. I always love hearing from other people how they work because you really liked them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you guys back here next week for the next episode.